For this explainer, we're doing something a little different. We're diving deep into just one really extraordinary source, the legal blog of a man detailing his 50-year battle against the state, a state he accuses of orchestrating the perfect crime against him. It's an incredibly complex and staggering story, so let's just jump right in. And this right here, this is the question at the very heart of it all, coming directly from the man himself, Hans Smedema. It's the lens you have to look through for every document, every claim, and every legal challenge in this really unbelievable, decades-long saga. So Hans Smedema's legal blog lays out what he calls a solitary war against a system designed to silence him. He's alleging a massive conspiracy that he says involves the police, the courts, and even the mental health system, all supposedly working together to protect some very high-level people. Now, to really get the scale of this, you gotta let that number sink in. 50+ years. We're talking about a conflict that has spanned more than half a century, a timeline that Smedema argues is just filled with consistent, calculated obstruction of justice. Okay, so the big question is, how does Smedema claim this was even possible? Well, according to his writings, this wasn't just random chaos. He says it was all based on a very structured blueprint. He outlines what he calls the 5 pillars of the conspiracy. So let's break down exactly what he alleges. According to the source, these are the core mechanics he's talking about. Weaponizing psychiatry to discredit him, creating a legal catch-22 so he's stuck, involving an alleged abuser as some sort of treatment expert, protecting perpetrators with royal decrees, and, just erasing critical evidence whenever it's surfaced. That first pillar Smedema describes is, well, it's pretty chilling. He alleges that by systematically labeling him with a delusional disorder, the authorities basically created a master key and allowed them to dismiss any and all of his claims. It's like they locked every door to justice before he could even approach it. Now, while all 5 pillars are detailed in his blog, let's jump to the 5th one for a minute, because this part sounds like it's straight out of a spy thriller. Smedema claims that way back in 1983, a U.S. intelligence officer found a 30-page Dutch intelligence file that explicitly confirmed the conspiracy. But then, poof, within 3 days, the file was reportedly erased by the Dutch Ministry of Justice, becoming what he calls ghost evidence. But hold on, the story doesn't end there. Smedema's blog states that the U.S. officer, who got fired after the Dutch ministry denied the file ever existed, later won his own appeal in 1997. And the evidence he supposedly used? A copy of that exact same non-existent file, which Smedema alleges was recovered by the CIA. This apparently led to a payout of nearly $1 million. So this brings us to the absolute heart of Smedema's legal fight today, what he describes as a totally Kafkaesque procedural trap, designed to make getting justice literally impossible. Here's how this alleged catch-22 works. The state demands official police reports to investigate his claims. Seems reasonable, right? But Smedema says he has evidence citing a detective Hey Brunsma back in 2004 that the Ministry of Justice explicitly forbade the police from filing those very reports. So it's a perfect circle of obstruction, just as he describes it. To fight this, Smedema invokes a really powerful legal principle. Now, the Latin is a mouthful, but what it boils down to is this. No one should be able to benefit from their own wrongdoing. He's arguing the state can't benefit from a lack of evidence that it actively suppressed. You can't profit from your own alleged crime of hiding evidence. Now, Smedema's appeal doesn't just present a theory. It documents a whole series of specific alleged felonies that he says were committed against him and his family over the decades. And the timeline presented in his legal filings is, well, it's harrowing. It begins in 1972 with an alleged forced sterilization. It includes that discovery of the ghost evidence in '83. He also highlights a key moment in 2009 when a U.S. immigration judge, Rex J. Ford, reportedly found his claims credible and not delusional. The timeline goes right up to 2017 with an alleged royal intervention and an asylum offer, and a 2022 discovery that the baby aspirin he'd been given for years was actually the antipsychotic drug Risperdal. This is how Smedema tries to ground his claims in physical reality. He argues that a psychiatric diagnosis can't just explain away tangible things, like a 7-centimeter scar, he says, is from a non-standard sterilization procedure performed on him without his consent back in 1972. And look, this isn't just history. This fight is active right now. Smedema's source material, his blog, is all centered around a formal appeal that's scheduled for November 2025, and it's an appeal that reframes the entire case.
His current appeal really rests on 3 main arguments. First is force majeure. He's arguing the state can't penalize him for evidence it blocked him from getting for 25 years. Second is physical mutilation, that a scar can't be dismissed by a psychological diagnosis. And third is U.S. judicial validation. He's citing that 2009 finding by a U.S. judge who found his claims credible.
This quote from his blog really just perfectly encapsulates the thesis of his entire case. He's arguing that the decades of alleged cover-ups, erased files, and procedural traps, that's not an absence of evidence. He's arguing that is the evidence.
And so this source material leaves us with a really profound and unsettling question. Smedema's dossier presents a scenario where the very institutions that are meant to deliver justice are the ones being accused of burying the truth. And it forces you to ask, in a situation like that, what could justice possibly look like, and how could it ever be found?